So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Federica Zambeletti. I am the founder of KoozArch. So I'm sitting in front of you as an architect, a researcher, and a storyteller, and as the founder of a magazine, which was really born out of the necessity of pushing the architectural dialogue beyond built buildings. So what we try to do with Kooz is really nurture an exchange, which is an architecture as process, as research, and as ideas. And as such, we are delighted to have been, let's say, a media partner of LINA for 3 years now, because similarly, LINA really embraces the work of emerging practitioners and really embraces the power of ideas and of research. So it has been really a pleasure working with, let's say, the fellows of the last 2 years, and I cannot wait also to platform the work that you guys will be undertaking this year with all of the members. Without then further ado, I would like to also, let's say, introduce this third and last panel. You must all be very tired, but one more to go, an extremely interesting one, to say the least. So, transmitting the city and modern anomalies, I would like to invite to the front the panelists, and also then ask those who will be presenting videos to then just briefly stand up when I call your names. But if Atelier, Remoto, and Jacopo Biffi could come, if Docar could also come to the front, Lucille and Jacques-Marie Ligot, Maria, it was a video. Sorry, I'll go back to my script. So Docar, Lucille, Netherlands Angry Architects, Radio Otherwise, Recity, Rubble, ToC Creative Club. So those of you who will be speaking, if you can come here, and the rest, then if you can just remain available to shout out who you are. Maybe I join you. So maybe in a little bit of a more conventional way to what we heard this morning, I was really interested in continuing and really embracing this idea of transmitting the city and modern anomalies on reflecting, using this as an opportunity to start reflecting on the notion of community, which we have recently heard from the two ladies, which is really at the heart of how Sarajevo continues to thrive and be built as a city. So I think that if we start understanding, let's say, this year's theme, community-led architecture, I hope to unravel a number of the questions. So what is community? To what extent is it an anthropocentric perspective? When we talk about community, are we only talking about human beings, or are we talking about other beings? When we talk about led, who is leading who? Do we need someone to lead? Does architecture ultimately need to be led? And at this point, also understanding how such a collaborative and expanded practice can help us shift towards a more generous way of approaching architecture. Of course, architecture can be violent, but I also do believe that architecture can be very generous. And I do think that if each and every one of us did not believe in the generosity of architecture, we probably wouldn't be here today doing the work that we're doing. So I would like to, let's say, move the attention now to the fellows with a little bit of these thoughts in mind. Maybe we can start from the videos. And at this point, I will just introduce, let's say, the three women which are behind the first video, which we will hear. They will be presenting Co-Living London. And these three women are friends, immigrants, and at the same time, architect trainees with a care towards the spaces we humans inhabit. So a big shout out to Marie Konstantopoulou, Marvina Sinjari, and Maria Tanasescu. If you're in the audience, could you maybe just briefly stand up so that we can see who you are? Hello? Super. Okay.
Hey, I'm Marvina. This is Maria. This is Mary. We've been renting for a long time and have a keen desire to tell the stories of our experiences, but also to get the experiences of others and look at both the joys and desperation of it. And only we started developing this project.
Rewind. Oh, we like the cat though.
This is Maria. This is Mary. We've been renting for a long time and have a keen desire to tell the stories of our experiences, but also to get the experiences of others and look at both the joys and desperation of it. And only we started developing this project and documentary about co-living in London. About me, my background is in architecture, as all of us. the connecting point. And I was always interested in filming. And since I was 12 and I had my first camera, my friends and family would call me a paparazzi. In addition, in 2020, with my friends in Athens, we created a cooperative that promoted circular economy. Hi, my name is Maria. I met Marvina studying our master's in sustainable architecture, and we learned a lot, not just about building fabric, but also about the wider context of architecture and construction, and that gave us a very good footing. After 3 years of working in architecture, I now set up for a company that helps people access government grants to retrofit their homes, and also helps people feel poverty with their energy bills. And I'm Mary. I am studying my master's in architecture and animation and storytelling through film, and I am very interested in the educational side of design. I teach architecture, and I've done various workshops on getting people to think about their spaces. When we moved to the UK, it's one of us significant year. We noticed a big contrast between what people have feeling in the UK and the reality, so we wanted to explore more on that. The documentary is for us a great way to show our findings and to make people aware of the situation in the UK as well as outside of the UK, for people to engage and connect with us and between them. For us, this project isn't just about building, it's about how people live and share spaces. We would like to show both the positives, like the communities we get to be a part of, but also the challenges and the systemic issues that we meet and are created as a result of the living conditions. Communalism is becoming more and more common as a bottom-up concern due to rising living costs. We want to question current housing standards, which disregard communities and allow buildings to fall apart. We want to explore how these living arrangements affect communities and can contribute to sustainably caring about the buildings we live in and each other.
For the past 10 years, we have been developing urbanism in Ukraine by introducing new urban approaches, providing professional education, and involving citizens in decision-making. We help cities to develop new visions, create high-quality public spaces, and enhance urban aesthetics and landscapes. Urban Reform was founded in 2014 in Kharkiv, the year when Ukrainians changed the government through the Revolution of Dignity and faced the war in Donbass. It was a time when many of us realized the power of civic engagement and the need to influence the development of our cities. Over the years, we have been working on projects for Ukrainian cities, implementing participatory practices, experimenting with public spaces, and advocating for new sustainable directions in urban development. Our work focuses on 4 key areas. We work closely with local communities and governments to develop shared visions, conduct research, and implement pilot projects that bring new life to urban spaces and spatial development strategies for cities and communities. We believe in the power of active citizenship. We facilitate community engagement in urban planning and decision-making processes, and design community centers that foster creativity and collaboration. We design public spaces that enhance well-being and foster connection. Our projects incorporate blue-green infrastructure, prioritize sustainability, and promote a harmonious relationship between people and their environment. We are dedicated to nurturing the next generation of urbanists. We organize workshops and share our expertise, including best international practices, to empower individuals and communities to shape the future of their cities. The war in Ukraine presents unprecedented challenges, but it has also strengthened our resolve. We are committed to using our expertise to help communities rebuild, recover, and emerge stronger than ever. We are prepared for large-scale recovery and are actively contributing to the development of cities today.
Rubble is a design and research collective founded in Dublin in 2023. Our collective grew out of a desire to build things together and to construct things that gave us the freedom to find new ways of inhabiting a city that felt increasingly commercialized and isolated. Today we are based in various cities around Europe: Dublin, London, Madrid, and Barcelona. Our projects look for alternative means of producing space. They are located, collaborative, and largely non-extractive, while also allowing us to explore our aesthetic identities as architects and designers. Our principal site is the city, finding small ways to intercept the uncontrollable growth of property development as capital. We are interested in provoking these power systems by working with communities, making sometimes strange and transient physical interventions on public space.
We use DIY construction as a medium to explore many types of projects, including writing, exhibition design, and installations, as well as furniture, graphics, and events. The concept of DIY as in self-building and appropriation allows us to explore many different questions while sharing that knowledge and demonstrating practically to others that they can also have an active influence over their environment. Material reuse and circular systems such as material banking, designing for disassembly, and working with rented infrastructures are embedded in our practice. We draw from our individual interests in queerness, mythology, fashion, protest, performance, and reuse, and we find connections to art, literature, and film, through which we develop our theoretical and aesthetic approach.
Our first project, The City Elsewhere, is an exploration of how to make green public space, an imprint where anybody could express their love for the city, in an abandoned port building on the outskirts of Dublin. We occupied the site with a group of students for 1 week and designed through building and finding. This was not only about creating architecture, but about creating new networks and experimenting with appropriation and disordered design. Without planning for precise outcomes, we ended up with a range of structures made from found and gathered materials, culminating with a spontaneous party and performance.
Currently, we're working on an exhibition of student work from across each University of Ireland. It is a counter-exhibition held in the same space as Ireland's National Building Expo, framed as a protest to the commercial exhibition below and the kind of construction ideology it stands for. It's built using rented construction infrastructure and includes a program of talks from students and non-architects to share knowledge and reflect on how we influence people and our environment in this ecosystem of construction professionals.
You'd be surprised to find that through our work we could make places which felt completely different to the city we knew, if only for a few hours in a small scrap of a place. We continue to build community through inviting guest speakers and new collaborators with each project we work on. We want to continue creating and being surprised by what kind of projects we can produce. We hope to host more events and performances and expand to more space for projects. We are also planning on designing a book inspired by 1970s DIY groups, which could be a manual of all the things we have built, reflecting on all the people who are involved in designing and using them.
Super. So maybe can I just ask NGO Urban Reform to stand up? Super. Thank you. And then, of course, Rubble. Okay, let's start. Unfortunately, it's not so much of a conversation, but I do hope that the kind of thoughts that will be presented will continue sparking conversations after. Let's start with Atelier Remoto and Jacopo. I don't know if it's you, okay. So I wanted to start with your project, Radio LINA, which is an immersive radio, a backbone between the LINA community and the cities, listening, recording, and broadcasting voices and sounds of research. So in the upcoming year, how does Radio LINA seek to catalyze the LINA community across cities and activities? And what is the potential of the radio today as a format?
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Federica. So I'm Lara, I'm the co-founder of Atelier Remoto, as Federica said, and we are an architectural office based in the northern Italy, and up there in the audience there is Jacopo. He's a musician and sound designer. So today we've been talking a lot about this word, community, and one question we had at the very beginning with Jacopo was how to connect all those fellows, how to make a web, how to bring out of the border what has been said here and in all those festivals, exhibitions, biennales, and happenings which are speaking about architecture. which are dealing with cities, which are dealing with changes, which are dealing with all the topics that you said today. And we thought, since we have a sort of shared passion, and we think that, answering a little bit your second question, that the potentiality of radio and of audio, can you hear me? I don't know.
Very well.
Okay, is a lightweight, is a light tool, is very democratic, can be transported everywhere, can be in your pocket as a small radiolina, and can also be a sort of online archive. So one intention of this radiolina project, even if since we started writing it, it kind of kept changing, we thought about it in two different ways, which in our, that we think build community in a different way. On one hand, to make a sort of online archive, a sort of radio, digital radio, which could give voice through memories, through imagination, through recording things that have been, or that will be done by the fellows. So literally the voice of radio, or the voice of Lina, like a radiolina. And the second way would be to bring out of the place the voice of what has been discussed and what that will be discussed. So making maybe workshop or constructing a transmitter to spread the voice and really encounter the territories, really encounter the people who is actually is the public of the discussion, of our discussion, of the discussion of everybody. And so, I don't know, we think that today we talk a lot about construction materials, recycling materials, but we think that in addition to that, we would propose another tool to build care and therefore knowledge and therefore care for the places that we inhabit. And this is maybe, as also previous presentation of Sarajevo, is done and has to be done by our memories, our imagination, our thoughts. And only through this we can somehow take care of places and maybe be able to make them better, or to tell them better, to discuss about them better. And so, yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm curious too, because obviously I think the LINA team has been doing an incredible effort in documenting, let's say, what happens. And with Kooz, we try to complement that, but of course the radio is there as a voice, right? So there's a huge potential also in the voice, in really hearing the voice itself. So really curious to see how the project unfolds this year, and potentially that could be a new format for Lina. Just putting it out there, Hannah, for you. Please don't kill me. And then in this sense, we start from radio, but Docar, you work with documentary film, and you work with documentary film really in a way as a means to documenting the housing estate in Paris. It represents the first step of a national change of paradigm from demolition to transformation. This was kind of obviously developed within the framework of House Europe. So I wanted to start maybe by asking you to maybe just explain a little bit House Europe, because I think it's important to contextualize that, and then understand the role that film can play in catalyzing, let's say, momentum for the process which House Europe will engage with from January in 2025, which is that of gaining 1 million signatories for the European Citizen Initiative.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we are indeed a film collective. We are not exactly collaborating directly with House Europe. We are part of a general movement in Paris that it's attached to House Europe. We're more linked to academic research, which is the very base of our work. With the collective, we are though very interested in parallel interests of House Europe, beginning with not so much how to do buildings, but more generally what buildings do. What buildings do when we observe them during long time. That's what we're trying to do with by filming them. Because we're interested more specifically in large housing estates, social housing, at the edge of demolition. So when they've been demolished, where they are about to be demolished, or where they're in this limbo where we don't know if they're going to be demolished or not. These are, for a Spanish person, for example, with the German and British collaborator, Jasper, might have sound a bit complicated to understand at first when we arrived to Paris, because it's a lot more contextualized for a French, for the context of France. But this is what we are starting to explore with our filming collective, because we understand that through the film we can talk about processes, materiality of the building itself, and how it resists in an actual way to these demolition processes. So Jasper and I, we made, we're architects and cineasts, but we both of us made in a political science background. So we're trying to merge both of these political approach and architectural approach through our project with, I believe it's quite similar to what House Europe is doing, although I must say we're not directly engaged with them. But yeah, this is what we're trying to do with this film, constitute sort of building biographies, try to switch the scope and understand, I think it's a lot of what's been told these days in this conference, switch the scope and understand what buildings are doing, how they evolve, not so much how we build them necessarily. We want to, I think we agree with we come along with the notion of buildings as a violence act, but we are trying to explore housing states also as an act of resistance, of material resistance. And this is particularly interesting for us to look at it through the scope of a camera. And to finalize, we use films as a way of pushing through academic research. So all our work is based on PhD studies linked to civil engineering university. So our film is also a way to explaining in more simple ways, in more simple words, our academic research that might be a lot more unraveled by the written word.
Super. No, and I think the idea of I think it's really important to really reflect on formats, because as some of the times we're so much kind of rooted in our own disciplines and the formats that we generally use, that using formats which are able to bridge, right? Bridge disciplines, bridge communities, as the radio as film is fundamental if we want to shift the way that the world is working today. And the next project I'm extremely, The next project is really a little bit out of my comfort zone, and it gives me a lot of curiosity because it's learning with ghosts. And so learning with ghosts is an itinerant hosting space and collective research that observes what ghosts can teach us about architecture and bodies. So I am dying to understand, what can ghosts teach us about how bodies come together in architecture, and how can this potentially change and shift our understanding of what constitutes a community?
Thank you for the question. I think, well, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself and Jacques. So I am a sculptor, so I don't come from the architecture field. And Jacques-Marie is an architect, and we kind of met recently, and we think like we have a lot of links in our practices, and one of the links would be actually kind of the way that affects kind of are mobilized in our environments, in our built environments. So we've been interested in ghosts and think that ghosts can kind of interrogate us about the invisible aspects of our built environments. And so we are studying a lot the work of an anthropologist called Grégory de la Place. And he interviewed many people who are living with ghosts. So, I mean, he's first of all like trying to put away this question of, do ghosts exist or not? Like, this is not...
They're here.
Yeah, they're here anyways. People are living with ghosts. It's been like centuries. And what's interesting in kind of interrogating ghosts and kind of trying to manifest them is that they actually tell us a lot about how we're living together. And usually when ghosts manifest, it's also, I mean, it's usually about a problematic about how we live. So for instance, one of the researches from Grégory de la Place was kind of thinking of how women in domestic spaces saw ghosts and what it told about kind of repression of their built environment, and that the fact that ghosts were in these spaces, it was actually telling a lot about some problematic in the material world they were in. And so, yeah, this is one of the things that we think that ghosts can teach us. And we're really interested in, so having a more plastic approach to this would also be kind of thinking of the way that our presences are also kind of ghostly, and like, for instance, our body odors or sweat, for example, or like when we cook, we always leave traces behind us, and we would kind of like to try to think about what that means for us, and how like to materialize these things that are invisible but that are actually very important in our everyday lives. That, yeah. And yeah, I think I answered maybe the question. So.
No, definitely. And I propose actually a little bit of a shift in the program, because I actually would love to hear from ToC Creative Club, because of course there we're talking about architecture, ghostly past, and unrevealed present, which aims to redefine abandonment through contemporary dance in Jermuk's former Palace of Culture, and rediscovering neglected spaces in a short documentary. So in this sense, how can these collective performances draw attention to and activate our building stock? And to what extent is it the space that we inhabit as humans, or as potentially as also other species and other forms of being?
Thank you. Actually, it's a great question, because it's a totally different perspective to our project. So I would like to give a bit of the context. So my name is Sona, and I'm art historian and curator. So ToC Creative Hub, that I'm representing with the co-founder, it's about collaborations between different art disciplines and between curators and managers. So we believe that these different key players in a field will generate ideas and also will create different approaches to speak about different questions. And when we speak about connecting communities, or about being connected to communities, we also consider the art field as a community that maybe can come together. So a couple years ago, we started to study abandoned buildings in Armenia, and it's very interesting context, because after the collapse of the Soviet period, a lot of buildings was abandoned, so nobody used them, and we also thought that maybe it could be also result that people wanted to reject this old period, and it was transformed on the buildings as well, because most of these buildings are not just houses or places, but they are cultural palaces or sport complexes. And when and there was a period in Armenia when government started to demolish this building. And then the community raised up, and they were saying, no, don't touch, because it's the part of the history, it's very important. But they didn't speak until it was not a question about demolishing. So we start to think, if the community is engaged and is interesting, why it's not speak or not connecting? Because usually we think about architecture, how to reuse it, how to renovate it, and how put it back maybe, or revealed its present. But for us, it's like a ghostly past, the reason that you are not connected with these buildings. So what we were offering, and how the collective performance going to change this approach, we are offering a very simple idea that every building is abandoned, kind of abandoned since the beginning, until we are not enter and not do something inside. So that's how we came up with the idea of performance, performative dance, or just dance performance, to enter, to move inside of the building, and to make possible your own physical presence inside. So how you will explore the place that you never have been inside, how you will look, how you will move carefully, or how you will try to realize where are you actually. And this will also make this connection with the buildings because you are like physically present, and also make you think, is there any other connection, and also involve the community to join this performance and to make it wider through the documentary film, which is actually going to document the way we speak through movement about the building. So it's not only like documenting the building, but also our experience in the building. And it will be also our biggest desire. And the first project will be in Jermuk Cultural Palace, but we also already have the second one. So it will be also the series of documentaries making this awareness about community to get involved before it will be topic, or it will be question, or it will be problem with demolishing or starting arguing, and pointed out that these buildings, even if they are abandoned or didn't used, but they are present. They are present, but for us now it's like a bit doubtable, but they are still there.
It's beautiful to see that even in these 3 years, there are certain threads that continue to punctuate a little bit the agenda of LINA, whether willingly or not. Some of the fellows, I mean, the work that you're proposing, I think already with the ISAI, there's been a number of fellows who have documented and really worked with these sites and understanding how performance can engage with certain kind of heritages. So it's beautiful to see how, in a certain sense, there is a fil rouge which connects 3 years, and I'm curious to see, even in the coming years, how that will unfold. Shifting a little bit in discussion and going back a little bit to the order, I was really interested. I love the name, Netherlands Angry Architects. Already there's something really strong in there. So you're addressing climate change from the labor perspective with the ambition of providing knowledge to individuals contributing to the built environment. So this morning, we heard a lot from, let's say, this idea of material practices, reuse, but for you, let's say, the kind of climate emergency also needs to be addressed by rerouting and redefining the labor practice in architecture. What does that mean, and how do you seek to let's say, achieve it in maybe this coming year, but presumably it's also a much longer project and process?
Hi, I was just checking if you can hear me. My name is Anna, and I'm not that angry today.
Good, we're safe.
We'll see. Which I think the name we were just talking about is a very good conversation starter, you know. And I'm also not Dutch. That's interesting. I'm just a trained architect. I'm here with Charlie today. Just so you know, it's not just me here.
Charlie, are you angry and are you Dutch? Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Completely out. But you can have it in your heart, you know, the anger. The Dutchness, I'm not sure. It's been a few years still working on that. And maybe I can answer your question of the future. Maybe I can just briefly probably, yeah, just to tell you like how we started on like this timeline of our thinking in that sense. What we've been doing for about 2 years now, with support of Dutch labor union, we try to talk to, that's mine, but it's for later. I don't need to take notes of what I'm saying. We try to educate architecture workers in the Netherlands on the very simple things like their labor rights, like wages and so on. It's pretty organized in the Netherlands, I have to say, but it's not always obeyed. And we do it with a trigger of having a conversation. So here I would like to actually draw some attention to the collective, but not of what you do with architecture to stimulate collectives and communities, but that the architecture as a practice should be one as well, and amongst ourselves. And that's what we're trying to do, because we believe that only by being in contact with each other, simply talking is enough. Often we can actually make a change in the architecture work landscape in the Netherlands, and we collaborate also with other similar sister organizations all around the world, basically, of who we know that is there. And now we're trying to, after those 2 years of work, this is an experience we've got, expanded to the whole industry. And the climate crisis is a very big issue there. with how people react to, for example, construction site conditions, or who are the decision makers and how people can voice their, or object or propose something, some changes in how the labor is done in, for example, extreme heat waves, or how you're exposed to toxic materials, and how things are being transported, and that often people just have to do their job, and it's not to make them stop working, but we believe that from this very, very bottom-up approach, or just bottom even, this is something, because often it doesn't reach the up, and that's the problem. Sorry? Yeah, but this is enough in a way. That's the point of becoming a collective or becoming unionized, to check. What we want to do is to check how we can connect people, architects with construction workers, with draftsmen, with contractors, that they're not so separate as they are now in many cases, and how they can all together have an impact, but it doesn't need to be at least at the beginning. I mean, this is my fantasy that it's big, but it can be very small, per office, per project, per location. And what we want to focus on now is, first of all, get information, stimulating the conversation. So what we hope also to get from this event, oh, that was loud, sorry, is learn what's the landscape of that in the European context, because we also have a lot, which I think is amazing, that we are in this part of Europe, which is, I'm not Dutch, but I'm Polish, so I just to make it, I think it's somewhat important. But there's a lot of workforce traveling to the west of Europe for building industry, or from non-EU to the east of Europe to the west, and we want to learn how it works, what are the conditions, what is the discussion within the context, and we're happy to talk to all of you about this. And I hope I answered your question.
Yes, the question, I mean, I think it's interesting, because obviously we're also talking about designing infrastructures of communication, right? From the radio to the video, to understanding and creating these spaces for exchange. And then we have another radio, which I will get on to. My question is it enough to design these spaces of exchange if one wants to get from, let's say, the bottom up? And at what point actually does it then have to become policy? Can it stay in that bottom up to make change, or not? And where do you see your work in that?
No, I don't think it can stay forever. Obviously, it needs to move, because we are still in a very, I would say, the industry is very hierarchical in a way, and there's we don't have this absolute democracy system, let's say. So obviously, it needs to go to some decision makers in the end. But it first needs to start at the bottom is a very bad word to say that, but it in a way is what it describes. But that's why I think what you mentioned, like the different channels of communication, this I think for us will be the biggest challenge in terms of like culture differences in the workforce, or the building workforce in Europe, language barriers, and there's the already existing segregation. So we hope to overcome that, and step by step make it visible. And if you have a whole company saying, okay, we don't want to work in these conditions, then you can make a change in one company, and then it can just escalate further. But it will be a very slow process, I believe.
And I think it's interesting, it ties back a little bit also to the presentation this morning, and the work of, for example, Charlotte Malter, which, yeah, I mean, the book is coming out, but she's been advocating for the longest time, both for the moratorium, but really for a rerouting of labor. And it's interesting to see how those two come together, right? Yeah. So I think there's also the beauty of understanding a network, which is working within institutions also to kind of tie those knots together and get to the policy and have those conversations with the policy, but also have those conversations with the clients, because fundamentally they also have a very big role. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we finish a little bit with the format that we started, and we're going back to a little bit the radio, in this sense, Radio Otherwise, which is an artistic research project exploring the plurality of experiences involved in radio making in connection to ecological thinking. So what is the potential of radio making in expanding the notion of community beyond the anthropocentric perspective to the other and the more than human? And then how does other radio otherwise operate within this?
My time's up.
Well,
no, I'm joking. It's the last one, so thanks for all paying attention on this long day. And I would just, I'm representing Radio Otherwise, and the other names are not in the program, and I don't see them up there, so I would just like to say that Monai de Paula Antunes is part of the group. She comes from artistic research and spatial design. Nico de Paula Lafort comes from bioacoustics, music, and listening. And then Martin Kuntz is our kind of technological wizard who designs a lot of the circuits and antennas.
My name here, or
none of them are here. That's sort of why I wanted to mention. Yeah. And my name's Kate, and I come from community radio, radio arts practice, and academia a little bit. So our project, it takes multiple forms. In some cases, we do workshops where we build antennas and we build micro FM transmitters. So they're like hyper-local FM transmitters, like they would just have a range of a space like this room. So it's very much about bringing people like literally together in a space. We also sometimes work with installation. But to answer your question about radio making, I wanted to give an example of a practice that we use a lot, which is live durational environment-specific radio making. So we have we set up an outdoor studio, and we call it a sensitive studio. So we use multiple different microphones, so microphones for water, for air, for earth, and different antennas to tune into different parts of the radio spectrum. So from high frequencies of internet and phone, like we heard about before, but also low frequencies and natural radio frequencies. So I guess what we're trying to do through this is shift the dynamic from just transmitting to really focusing on practices of listening, and then sharing through radio these listening to various ecologies in a particular space and time.
I think that's a fantastic way to end, really, on the power of listening, because I think communities, the strength of community is really of listening to each other, right? Listening, creating those spaces of exchange where one can speak, but one can learn ever so more when they're silent and just listening to the words of others, I believe. So I think on this note, I will shut up and cannot wait to see what you will come up with this year and the conversations in the next 2 days. So yeah, thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Federica.